Hello, everybody. I'm John Romano, and I'm going to be your host today for this special kickoff podcast for Connectionology Seminars of America. We have two really super special guests. I'm going to introduce them in just a few minutes here, but I want to tell you, I am so excited to bring the folks of OnPoint Legal Nurse Consulting Services to us today. These are folks I have worked with for many years. Our law firm, Romano Law Group, we work with them all the time on a multitude of projects, individual cases, malpractice cases, product liability cases, premises liability, auto, trucking, everything. We like working with them. So let me tell you first a little bit about OnPoint before I introduce our guests. OnPoint is a nationwide litigation support team providing comprehensive services on any cases involving illness or injury. Their services range from medical records retrieval through expert testimony. OnPoint has experts in every clinical specialty and setting, from physicians, nurses, allied health providers, nursing home and assisted living, to name just a few. They match the geography and experience needed for each case. And post-settlement, OnPoint provides case management services for individuals with long-term medical needs. For over 25 years, OnPoint has been the go-to medical legal resource for many law firms to understand what is in the medical records of their client, the helpful facts, documentation that might help the defense and know how to rebut it, and for expert witness testimony on liability, causation, and damages. One goal is to assure the attorney is never blindsided by the facts in the medical records. Another goal is to maximize your case value with credible future costs in a medical cost projection for life care plan and presentation of pain and suffering which your client has endured. Finally, OnPoint has a nurse coordinator for each of its main programs: retrieval and organization, consulting, nursing home, long-term care, and expert witness. Each case is assigned to an administrative assistant who facilitates communications with clients, consultants, and experts to ensure accessibility, timely follow-up, and reporting. So I want to go to our special guests. These are folks that I just love working with. And first, Mindy Cohen. Hello, Mindy. Good morning. How are you?
I'm terrific, John. Good morning. It's nice to be here with you.
I'm glad you're here. And a little bit about Mindy. Since 1995, Mindy has worked in the medical legal arena as president of Mindy Cohen and Associates, now OnPoint LNC. Among other things, she provides litigation support in the areas of med-mal, nursing home, assisted living facility and types of cases, personal injury, workers' comp, mass tort, product liability, toxic tort, and yes, even in criminal cases. She is an author, a lecturer, a conference presenter. Mindy received her bachelor's and master's degree in nursing with honors from the University of Pennsylvania. She is past president of the American Association of Legal Nurse Consultants, and Mindy holds the credential of Legal Nurse Consultant Certified. And I can just tell you from the experience I have had with Mindy, when I think about experts in the field of nursing and legal nurse consulting, she is right here at the top. Mindy, I just can't thank you enough for all you have been doing over the years and the services you bring, not just to the legal profession, but to the medical profession, the nursing profession, and what you do for cases. Just extraordinary. So thank you, and we're going to come to that shortly. How about if you just give us a brief overview of what you would like to say as we get started, and then I'll go to Ingrid and introduce her, and then I'm going to have some questions for you. Go ahead.
Terrific. Thanks, John. We are so excited to be here today to tell your viewers and your Connectionology attendees about OnPoint. We've been in business for about 27 years. As the founder of OnPoint, I recognized the need way back when for what nurses can offer to attorneys and judges and jurors about explaining the medicine. And we've grown in many directions, and I hope we'll get a chance to talk about that over the course of the next period of time. We're going to have a lot of fun sharing some war stories, talking about how our business has grown and to the various services that we offer now across the board to plaintiff attorneys. As you kindly said in your introduction, we have a lot of diversity of what we offer, and we are a nationwide firm with a small personal feel. So we hope to get that across today too, that we are easy to work with, we're fun to work with, we are at the top of our field, whether it's legal nurse consulting or an ER physician or a nursing home administrator. We're going to bring that to bear for your clients and their cases. So we're excited to be here with you this morning and get to it.
Well, and Mindy, thank you. But one of the things that I have tried to preach to lawyers all over the country when I'm giving talks and presentations is the need for nurses to be brought into the practice of law in what we do. Our firm, we cannot do cases without nurse involvement, without legal nurse consultants involved. And we're going to talk about all of the things you do for us, but it has made a difference not only in whether we take a case, but once we take it, how we handle it, what we do with it. We can't live without legal nurse consultants. So important. So
yeah, I get it.
All right. Our other special guest today, Ingrid Siegera, another great, fabulous nurse with OnPoint. Ingrid has been a nurse for more than 30 years. She practiced in critical care for 10 years and then went on to get her master's degree and become a clinical nurse specialist working with cases involving the elderly. She's done it all, but that was a niche specialty. Her position before coming to OnPoint full-time was that of Chief Nursing Officer at a PACE site owned by the University of Pennsylvania School of Nursing. Ingrid is passionate about protecting the rights of older adults, especially in the long-term care setting, about educating attorneys and healthcare providers about their care. She has reviewed and assessed and evaluated cases regarding nursing home issues, as well as writing pain and suffering reports for Mindy and the folks at OnPoint. And we're going to talk about those pain and suffering reports in a little while. So let me, I'm trying to give some thoughts to some of the really important things I'd like for everybody to hear about today. But I want to start with something that is a little more personal for each of you. We are all drawn to a profession, a job, a calling, an occupation by either something that happens in our life or some special person in our life where something happens and our mind all of a sudden takes us to wanting to do that. I want to ask you, and Ingrid, I'll go ahead and start with you on this. What brought you to the profession of nursing? What clicked to make Ingrid one day or one night say, I want to be a nurse? Tell us about that.
Well, I remember very clearly because my family is European, so we always celebrated Christmas Eve. And every year we had my mom's best friend's daughter, who was a nurse from Norway, would come and visit. And I always admired and loved, she was a psychiatric nurse, loved listening to her stories. And on one Christmas Eve, you know, typically only got one present then, believe it or not. And in my case, it was a little nurse's kit with a cape and a cap and a stethoscope, all made of plastic.
Wow.
I never changed my mind, not once. And somehow it all came together. I loved the sciences. When I was in high school, I worked in a Mennonite nursing home as a nurse's aide. I loved it so much. Always connected with elderly folks, and ended up going to Lankenau Hospital for a diploma way back when. So I was taking care of patients from the, just about week one, and was always drawn, even in critical care, my 10 years to older folks, to listening to their stories, to how complicated it was taking care of them. It's as complicated as, if not more so, like pediatrics. And I've become more and more passionate about it. The more I know about it, the more I learn, the more comfortable I am with it. And understanding and educating attorneys about things like bed sores, that just because it happens doesn't mean it was bad care, although oftentimes it is. And being in front of attorneys on a daily basis, whether it's via phone call or doing things like this, presentations, educating, having conversations about it. It's just, I miss the bedside, but boy, I really love this and make it a difference in people's lives when it comes to finding justice for those that have suffered.
Well, that is a beautiful story. And Mindy, how about you? What was it that clicked for you that brought you to wanting to be a nurse?
Well, my story is not as profound as Ingrid, although it has turned out to be as meaningful. I went to law school because I thought it would be, I always wanted to be Perry Mason. That was my aspiration growing up. And I thought that going to nursing school would give me a better option of, instead of all of the history and philosophy and whatever everybody who went, all the applicants to law school. I thought nursing would be a better introduction. And so I went to nursing school. I worked in pediatrics, which I adore. That's my initial background. And then I was ready to go to graduate school and went to look at law schools and realized that I was always interested in the law, but I didn't want to practice law. And that working with children and working with their families and that educating them, and that was really what struck me. So I decided to go to graduate school in nursing, which I did. My background is in child and family psychiatric nursing, and then taking that systems theory into administration and working as a nurse administrator. And then one day I found out something about legal nurse consulting, and I called 5 friends who were attorneys and said, gee, have you ever heard of this? Do you think there's anything to this? And in 5 phone calls, I had 2 jobs. And
Wow.
never looked back. And as Ingrid said, it's been a wonderful blend for me to, I worked clinically for many years, even while OnPoint was growing and developing. And just the idea to be able to find justice for people who are injured, and obviously our work is not mostly in pediatrics, it's everything. But to feel like we could make a difference, that any case could really make a difference in a facility on the outcome of care for other patients. So it's been a very meaningful, beautiful blend of healthcare and our work in the legal industry, all to the same purpose.
Well, those are just 2 beautiful stories as to how something so important developed in each of your lives. One of the things that has intrigued me over the years is how to extract information from people who mean well, but who are not necessarily at ease about giving information. I know that we went to OnPoint back, it's probably been about 2 or 3 years ago, but we asked you all to have a nurse interview one of our clients so that we would have what I would call a nursing interview or a medical interview. And I thought that our firm had done a great interview of this client. And I learned I learned a lot better, because what you all did is, with a nurse conducting the interview, it was a different world of an interview. Tell us just a little bit, and I'd like to hear from each of you on this. How do you approach that when you're trying to talk to somebody to find out what really happened in that person's, either the injury or a hospitalization, or his or her interactions with medical people in a hospital or a nursing home? How is it that you approach it that you think is different from what a lawyer is doing when he or she approaches an interview like that? Mindy?
You know, John, the first thing that comes to my mind is probably not the questions you ask, but the perspective and the role you're in. So I think when an attorney approaches a client, it is for the purpose of a case. It is for the purpose of understanding what happened to them to evaluate a case. When a nurse approaches a client, you know, the role of the nurse and how clients think about nurses just takes you into the healthcare realm. So I think that if you have a sensitive nurse, you're starting off on a different field, a different level than the attorney. So we're able to start at where the client is and what was your experience, and the experience is not only their injuries, but what was it like for you in the hospital? And the follow-up questions may be medically based, because and not to say that the attorneys or your staff haven't learned a lot of medicine over the years. Many of you are beyond experienced and knowledgeable, but I think there might be something just in the feel of the questions and the follow-up and the way a nurse relates to a patient or client in this case, just makes them be more forthcoming. I don't know that it's a secret that I've ever uncovered.
It's always struck me as a nurse is generally a far superior listener than most peers. And the other thing is that nurses are trained to listen in order to help cure the sick or injured patient, whereas lawyers, when they do listen, they are listening to extract information more so for the case. I've always felt the really terrific lawyers are also trying to help figure out the cure, the help for the client or patient. Ingrid, your take on this in terms of the nurse versus lawyer extracting information in these special interviews of clients and patients.
Well, I agree with everything that you said and with what Mindy said. I actually have been involved many times in interviewing and talking to family members about their loved ones. And I think that sometimes the attorneys ask me to do that, and sometimes I suggest it because I feel like something is missing. And I think that because nurses are so trusted, supposedly the #1 trusted profession, that helps. That gives us some credence from the beginning. And I've listened to attorneys be extremely kind and do a really good job of listening to their clients. And with me, it's not typically the person that was injured, it's going to be the family member. I've had sisters, I've had sons and daughters, I've had spouses, and I start out with saying, I'm so sorry for what you've been through, and just an open-ended question, tell me about what happened. And again, because of my knowledge with geriatrics, like Mindy said, the follow-up questions just sort of come naturally. And we've uncovered a lot of interesting things, sometimes for the better, and sometimes like, a red light sort of goes on saying, this is not what I thought it was. This is not the strong case I thought it was. Or other times, now I understand, now I know where to look in the records, or now I know where to tell the expert to look and what they need to focus on. So it can be extremely helpful to interview folks.
All right. Another question. For those who haven't had the opportunity to work with you or legal nurse consultants, just tell us a little bit about how you can help them in support of the case. And let me swing back to you, Mindy, to get started on this one.
Well, I think the most important thing that OnPoint brings to a case is, one, we're very focused on looking for the detail in the medical record. Because as you said in our intro, we never want the attorney to be blindsided. And it's the details in the case that help you win or lose it. So we look to make sure that we find all of the important details that are going to support your case or challenge your case. And if there are facts that are going to challenge the case, we try to understand if there are other facts in the record that can rebut that, so that you're prepared for the defense. And then we like to simplify the medicine as best we can, because keeping it simple is really going to be the way, another way to success. Finding the detail and being able to impart it to the opposing counsel, to the adjuster, or to a jury if it gets that far. So I think those are really what we're looking for fundamentally to help the plaintiff attorney.
And what you are saying, does that hold true regardless of what type of case it is? In other words, whether it's a malpractice, product liability, perhaps a trip and fall, automobile collision, does it across the board hold true?
Absolutely, John. We'll be looking for the same things as it relates to medicine. So for instance, if we're doing a product liability case, we might also conduct a fair amount of research on the product, what unique things need to be looked at for, say it's a medication issue. How long was the client on it? What side effect? We will look for certain things that are relevant to that type of case. In a bad baby case, we'll be looking at the fetal monitor strips and comparing that to the nursing documentation or the medical documentation to see what's consistent, what's not consistent. So what we look for will be driven by the type of case, but our overall process is similar regardless of the type of case.
Ingrid, one of the things that has been that is so important when law firms are dealing with either an expert or a legal nurse consulting service is this concept of responsiveness. I know that a while back, we had a need for a particular type of an expert. I called up to OnPoint. The person I was dealing with not only got right back to me, and it was nighttime, but I remember her in the sweetest way saying, "And exactly when do you need this expert?" And I said, "Like yesterday." And at about 11 o'clock that night, your nurse was back on the phone with me with the expert and introduced me, and we were able to discuss that particular project that night. Ingrid, how important is responsiveness in your work as a legal nurse consultant when you are working with attorneys and other people, even the client and perhaps other experts?
I can't even tell you how often I have been called and emailed asking for just that sort of thing. Typically not at 11 o'clock at night, but certainly in the final hour of the day. And I think that's one of the things that sets us apart. I know that for myself and my colleagues and our admin staff, we are like on our computers and with our cell phones all day long. I think that one of the things that we do very well is respond immediately. I think I hear just about daily how thankful people are for us getting back to them so quickly. I have I learned from the best from Mindy starting 25 years ago to analyze medical records and write reports. And that has helped me be better at my job these days. I have a cadre, an Excel spreadsheet full of experts that I know that trust me and I trust them. I call them up. If I need a favor, like I need a report yesterday, I typically can get it. And I'm proud of that. I've been running the long-term care program that now I like to call the geriatric program for 5 years. And I'm very proud of the experts that I work with. And I think that responsiveness is like very important on point and what does set us apart.
Well, it is such a key, because in our world, things move so fast, and you don't know from day to day some of the curveballs you're going to be faced with. And usually when we're faced with curveballs, we're looking for a lot of people to be responsive in many ways. And you at OnPoint have always done that, and that's been so important.
John, could I throw something in there about that?
Sure.
I think one of the strengths of OnPoint is that we understand how busy attorneys are, how timeline driven the law is, and how many priorities you have to juggle. So what might be a priority today, and we are looking for an expert or doing a behind the scenes review, and we send it to you, and then we don't hear something for a few months because several other priorities have jumped up. So we really understand that, and understand that it's our responsibility as a firm to be that responsive, because we understand what you're up against, and that when you need something, you need it. And that it's often not, and we do try to train our clients to give us as much lead time as possible, but we know the reality of what attorneys are up against. And so that makes it easy for us to respond, because that's our job. I mean, that's what we want to do.
Yeah, and one of the things that I love about OnPoint, though, is you have always understood the concept of great experts are there to bring the truth out to the judge and jury. And at OnPoint, what you do is help lawyers and law firms, and therefore their clients, understand, I guess what I would call it, the good, the bad, and the ugly of a case. And if there is no case, you will say right up front, very firmly, very directly, the evidence does not support your case, attorney so-and-so. And that is so important, because if we know right up front there is no case, then we can decline to take that case. Or if we know maybe there's a case, but there are certain problems, obstacles, hurdles, and you say, here's a way we can overcome certain obstacles with evidence, with the truth, that's what we want, and that's what we get with OnPoint. So speaking of the truth, have there been some cases, perhaps recently, an example of a case, and I'm asking this of each of you, that you are particularly proud of, where you say, you know, I really love the work that OnPoint did on that particular case. I loved being involved in that case. And because of what ultimately happened in terms of a result or an outcome, I feel as though we have such a meaningful role in these cases. Let me go to each one of you for that. Who would like to start? Either one.
Well, I can, and just, there's not one particular case that stands out with me. What does stand out with me is that, you know, in the nursing home world and the geriatric world, most cases settle. I do have experts that testify and are very good at it. A lot of them these days are going through depositions that are 5 and 6 hours long. But what I do get on a regular basis is an attorney writing to me and saying to me and the expert saying the case settled, and I respond with, I hope you're happy with the outcome, congratulations. And most of the time, more than 90% of the time, I hear I'm extremely happy. I get complicated about the experts all the time and send it out to them and say thank you for doing such a good job. You know, it's tough for the nurses and physicians. They are working full time. They're working under very difficult circumstances, especially this last 2 years, and they still come through. We're dealing with some COVID cases, and it's all challenging. And to hear that on a regular basis is part of what makes me feel good and make OnPoint shine. Is that's why they keep coming back to us, because we get it done and we get it done well. I mean, the experts that I use, attorneys, are always writing to them and CCing me saying, this is a beautiful report. Thank you. That's what stands out in my mind. Mindy, I'm sure you have excellent things to say.
I have a couple cases come to mind, John. One of our biggest cases was a trucking case where an attorney had initially come to us for a timeline to figure out what happened, and somebody was pretty injured and wanted to see the course of their treatment. And then that rolled into a pain and suffering report, and armed with those 2 reports was able to go into a mediation and settle that case for $13 million. And you know, the number may not be as big as some catastrophic cases in the country, but for the circumstances of this case, the attorney was thrilled. And we were thrilled because when he emailed us, like Ingrid is saying, before we talked to him, he's like, I could have never expressed what I needed to express in that mediation without this detail. And so they were really able to directly tie the settlement and his presentation of the information we gave him to our work. And that's a beautiful thing to get that kind of feedback.
Yeah, I mean, that is just terrific. Speaking of pain and suffering reports, I know that is one of the products or services OnPoint provides. What is a pain and suffering report?
So a pain and suffering report is basically something that's written in layman's terms that explains what your client's injuries are and what was the treatment like over the course of their period of time from the injury to whatever the present is. And it's all factual, John. It's taken out of the medical record. So there's not an interpretation like a liability expert. So it's a very powerful report because there's really no rebuttal to it. There's really nothing that the defense can say that this is not true, because it's all taken from the medical record. And we will explain things like, what are the losses your client went through? Mobility, loss of independence, loss of their job. What were the losses they sustained as a result of their injuries? What fears do they have? Are they afraid to be a passenger in a car? Are they afraid to drive? Are they fearful for their future because of their long-term permanent injuries? So that information from the medical record is indisputable. If the record says the client complained of pain, 7 out of 10 on a pain scale, or the patient is crying with pain, we will use those exact words. So we're not going to change big to large. So there's no room really for rebuttal. And that makes it a powerful tool. Attorneys have used the pain and suffering reports in many different ways. Sometimes they use them just to get a handle on what really happened to the client, and they will use it to help prepare clients for their own testimony. And that can be really powerful because you're helping somebody maybe relive a paraplegic the first time they go to physical therapy and say to the physical therapist, what am I doing here? I'm never going to walk again. like, wow, like how emotional and devastating is that reality to a person? And here it is captured by the physical therapist. So to be able to take your client back to that point in time to help the jury understand what that was like. So we provide the detail from the medical record, the significant events that your client went through to be able to recall that. We've had, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just tell you, I mean, it was many years ago when you introduced me to the pain and suffering report, and the first one that you all did for us, we were able to not only provide to some of our experts, but we took it into a mediation, and it, as the story you already told about someone's trucking case, we were able to do just that, use that pain and suffering report to enhance the damages understanding of the case by the mediator, by the defense, by everyone, and it really resulted in a wonderful outcome for the client. And I always felt the pain and suffering report helped so much. But another thing that it does, it helps everyone on the trial team better organize his or her thoughts in getting ready for trial. And that's why I tell people, incorporate your legal nurse consultant as a part of your trial team. And so I love the pain and suffering reports.
Yeah.
I try to do them in a lot of cases. I interrupted you though.
I mean, but speaking of trial, that's a great place where I was going to go next.
Yeah.
The nurse can testify as an expert fact witness because of their background and ability to explain complex and voluminous medical situations. And if there's not a need for that foundation, say your client can testify on his own or her own, and you have experts who could present, we could use the pain and suffering for the details to support your other expert testimony. So if one of your physicians talks about pain and suffering, we could do the behind the scenes work to verify the elements of pain and suffering that you want that expert to testify to, and they can then authenticate that in the record. So we can do that by way of charts and exhibits that doesn't necessitate an attorney bringing in an additional expert where that may not be necessary, but certainly the level of information that we get to can really supplement another expert's testimony. And we've even had some attorneys who've used the report to force an early settlement, John, because they knew the extent of the injury. And we know that early settlement doesn't happen often, but sometimes you just have that powerful case and you have a defense attorney who's smart and sees what they're up against. And, you know, the issue is just take out your checkbook because this is where it's going to go anyway.
Well, I like that. And Ingrid, let me throw just a little bit of a curveball at you here. I know that when I talk to trial consultants, their biggest criticism of the lawyers with whom they deal is they call us at the last minute instead of at the beginning of the case. And they say, well, it's trials next week. Could we do a quick mock trial? And the trial consultant would say, don't waste your time. When I talk to medical illustrators, I say, when do you usually get called? And they say, well, when the lawyer's leaving Friday afternoon docket call and the judge says you're number one Monday, they call us and say, on an expedited basis, we need medical illustration. In your dealing, Ingrid, with law firms, with trial lawyers, what are the biggest, I don't want to say problems, but if you were saying, look, I wish lawyers would do this and not this, what are the things that help you as a legal nurse consultant that the law firm can do? Tell us the good and the not so good. In other words, what criticism do you have as to what law firms do that makes it more difficult for you? And what are the things law firms can do to make it more helpful?
You know, I feel like my role in all of this is as Mindy's been talking about, is to help the attorneys. The most challenging thing is when it's last minute. Some attorneys are better at communicating than others are, but luckily we have a great system where, you know, we have a program that helps us to follow up. So between myself, we three nurses that run the programs, and our admins, we're really good at following up. We have follow-up dates that are triggered, and we have reports every week that come, and my admin, either she can follow up on things or I do if I, you know, have a relationship with an attorney that I want to talk to the attorney myself. I mean, I think that, you know, for the most part, the attorneys that I deal with, and many of them are longtime clients or new clients that I know are going to go on and on because they like what they're getting. You know, I think that it's important sometimes for us to actually talk to each other and not just email. Things get lost in the email. So, you know, I don't have my cell phone on my email, but I will share it and say, give me a call, let's discuss this. And the more that happens, I think the better it is. You know, I think it's really my job to make it easy for the attorneys. So, you know, if they're polite and grateful, I love that. And 99% of the time they are. So I really love it.
Well, it's always intrigued me how if we really think more about what we're doing as lawyers, we understand that so many of the key people we need in the case, we should call them day one.
Yeah.
And get them integrated in the case. And I think we just have to be blunt about it. So many lawyers say, well, do we really want to spend money on the trial consults? Do we want to spend early money on medical illustrations? Do we want to spend? And my take has always been to them, I don't care if you got the money or you don't have the money, call those people and figure out a way to at least start communicating with them, including the legal nurse consulting service. Because if let's just say that I decided in the first month, we're not going to bring OnPoint on board, I can at least talk to you and say, here's what's going on in the case, be on standby. Now you may say, yeah, well, we're on standby, but we still would like to start seeing some of the records. It helps so much. It just helps so much. It reminds me when lawyers wait till the last minute, it almost reminds me of an athletic team. It can be the women's Olympic soccer team or an NFL football team. But it would be like they show up for the game and start to organize. And somebody says, well, who's the coach? Well, we're going to figure that out now. Have you had any practices? No, we haven't had any practices, which is what mock trials are all about. Well, I want you to think about that. In a typical case, when a lawyer has not done mock trials or focus group studies, that means the first rollout of the case is in front of a real jury. And that is such a mistake in most cases. So what I want lawyers to do is, in working with the legal nurse consulting service with OnPoint, is get to you early on in the case. And that way you can provide more guidance, more advice, more, hey, here's what we need to do. And I think that would help in their cases so much.
John, on the behind the scenes cases, where we're providing behind the scenes guidance, that's really important, because we can also help the attorneys decide which are the critical records to obtain, to look at first. Where is it worth getting the physical therapy or the home care records, or maybe not, things that some attorneys tend to leave to the last minute, but we might decide, like if Ingrid knew that somebody had a bed sore and they didn't go from the hospital directly to a nursing home, but there were home care was involved, then she's going to know right away that she could say to the attorney, you need to get those home care records so we could see what the interim status was. on the other thing for the behind the scenes cases, and Ingrid alluded to this because we see this a lot, the attorney will just email us a bunch of records and say, you know, my guy had neck and low back pain. Can you figure out what was related to this MVC or what wasn't? But if they give us a little bit of time for the first few cases we work on with them to really get to know their way of thinking about a case, how they want their reports prepared, what is important to focus on, then from a behind the scenes point of view, we're fine to just receive a bunch of records and say, here's a new case. It's a 32-year-old slip and fall and fractured leg. But up front, if the attorney invests a little bit of time in us, that will pay off tremendously in the end, because then the first few times we work with somebody, we get in a groove to make sure that we're presenting the information in a way that their mind works. We're pretty flexible in how we can prepare our reports. So we want to prepare them in a way that an attorney's mind, a particular attorney, thinks.
So on those lines, let me ask a specific question about a specific case. And let's just assume it is a medical malpractice case. I call up to OnPoint and I say, we have all of the records and we would like OnPoint to work with us all the way through the case. Let's say we get you in the case early on. We're going to ask you to do the smorgasbord of everything that you do, including help us find the expert. We sign a retainer agreement, we send the records to you. What are then the services and products OnPoint can provide for that case if we went with everything?
That's a super question. So the first thing we typically do in those cases is what we call a merit screen, a down and dirty review to look through and see what are the strengths and weaknesses that the record are showing. Does it look like you have a case? What are the things that you might have to overcome? And then we'll send that report to you. We'll talk about it and say, oh, this looks like a great case. So typically the next thing we might do would do simultaneously. One, we would find you an expert for your affidavit of merit or certificate of merit, depending on what state and venue you're in, what you need. And then we might start with a more in-depth chronology of facts. And that chronology would basically be as detailed or not detailed as the attorney would like. So it might include pain and suffering facts in it, or it just might be the overview of the liability, depending on how you like to look at it. Once you get back a signed affidavit and you know you're going to go forward, then there's usually a lull in activity. And then depending on where you want to go, we might develop the chronology more fully with our analysis. We may develop some simple charts and exhibits, nothing that is sophisticated that you would send to a medical illustrator, but there are certain types of charts and exhibits that we can do based on the medicine. If you're looking at a post-op case and somebody's falling blood pressure and changing labs that are missed over a period of time, or an L&D case where the decelerations are changing and the baby's picture are not good and nobody's calling the surgeon, the OB. So we'll be able to show that in more depth to support your case as you go along. And then for the most part, our consulting team backs out for a period, and then you're working with our experts, our liability. If the liability expert can't deal with causation, say it's a bad baby case and we need a pediatric neurologist to testify and review for damages in long-term care. And then we might come back in with a life care plan, for instance, or a mediation presentation. So we can come in and out of the case. We could come into the case at any point that an attorney needs, and then come in and out of the case as the case develops. So I got a call one day, the attorney said, oh my God, I just got out of the deposition and my expert has had two felony charges and he never revealed them to me. And I need a new expert tomorrow. And so depending on what you need from us is how that would work.
But let me ask you this, and I'll swing this over to you, Ingrid. Do you have like a continuum of work that you do on a case? So as an example, we send a case in, let's say it's a nursing home case, and you do the initial assessment and you help us screen the case, you help us get an expert, but then we get into discovery, we start taking depositions. Can we send those depositions to OnPoint to where you continue to assess, review, evaluate the case to where you're helping us with strategy and with next steps?
Absolutely. That's the way we like it to be. I like to be involved from the very beginning. And part of the nursing home program, which I really like to say now is a geriatric program, because we manage cases that are in hospitals, home care, assisted living, SNF, group homes, the whole, and certainly long-term nursing homes. And we do a lot of merit screens. And a lot of times I have a good enough relationship with a lot of attorneys that they don't know if it's a case or not. And they shoot it to me. Sometimes I even have an attorney that sends me pictures, either of a bed sore or somebody with a lot of bruises, and said, is this a case? And I say, I don't know, but if you get a hold of the records, let me take a look. And if I can take a look quickly, I will do it gratis. Mindy never liked to hear me say this, but I will, because then I develop a great relationship. It's going to take time. They've got to pay for it. But, so I love doing quick and dirty merit screens, and so do the attorneys. And I can do it pretty quickly because I know where to look. And then the other thing that our merit screens do is tell you who the potential defendants are. Medical directors are not often brought in, but I think that they should be more often. NPs, physical therapists, whatever, helping the attorneys figure that out. And then as records come in, part of what we do again is to keep things organized and keep things straight because of my great admin staff and the computer program that we have. Here came some depositions. The other thing I like to say about in my program is that the attorneys and the experts work together. I like for them to be able to communicate. I just want to be behind the scenes and make sure that things get done in a timely way, and that the attorney's happy with whatever they get. Whether it's a report or an AOM, we have samples to send out to attorneys to say, is this the way you want it to look? And keeping the lines of communication open. I mean, DEPs are coming in all the time and go right to the experts, and then they do addendums. I make sure the addendums get done on time and that the attorneys are happy with whatever the reports look like. We very typically send the reports as drafts with a big draft written at the top of it so the attorneys can look at it and make sure they're happy. And again, my experts are very responsive and get things done in a timely way. So yeah, we're there from the beginning to the end.
Well, that helps so much. I am stunned to realize we are already at 1 hour. I
Wow.
Where time has run to. So I want to ask one final question of you, and let me direct this to you, Mindy. There are many legal nurse consulting services throughout America. OnPoint, I know that you feel is beyond special and unique. What is it about OnPoint, legal nurse consulting service, you feel sets it apart from the others and makes it so special and unique?
John, I think a few things that come to mind. One is just the amount of experience. We're doing this for over 27 years, and our model is such that our program coordinators are all very experienced legal nurse consultants, and we have that built-in quality assurance because we understand. So even if we're working with a newer expert, somebody is doing that with a lot of experience. We're not producing timelines and chronologies that an experienced legal nurse consultant hasn't already reviewed to make sure it has in it what it needs to have. So I think our experience and our built-in quality programs, by the way, that we don't charge for, that's our cost of doing business, to assure that you won't be blindsided, to assure that the facts are there. We have a really unique analysis that we've built over many, many years, strengths and weaknesses of your case. If there are weaknesses, is there anything in the documentation to rebut it? If not, what additional records do you need to get to further clarify that? We'll pull out causation and prognosis statements, so you know exactly what's in that record that you're going to be up against. And some of those are positive and some of them may be not beneficial to the case, but you need to know that they're in there. So that's critical. I think the fact that we're available, we're accessible, and we're good listeners, and we understand what the attorneys need and what you're up against, and that's the reason we exist. And to your last question, we're available throughout the life of the case, however you need us. Do you need us to help you develop deposition questions? Do you need us to take your depositions and compare it to the medical record to see if the deponents testified truthfully, or if they just created a set of alternative facts that meet their need, but really were not accurate? So we have that ability to come in and out of a case to be the most cost-effective resource for you. So I think those are things that we know how to do, and we do it well, and we're thrilled to be in this field. We love it. We love our work, and we love our clients.
Well, that is so awesome. And Romano Law Group, we're one of your clients. And at the lawyers here at Romano Law Group, we love working with OnPoint. We've been doing it a long time. We're going to continue to do it forever.
That's great to hear.
And I am thrilled, Mindy and Ingrid, that we were able to do this. I can't thank you enough. This has been wonderful. I've enjoyed it. And I'll tell you what, I'm ready to do it again. And we'll move on to some other subjects when we do another podcast. So on behalf of Connectionology Seminars of America, I thank you, Mindy. I thank you, Ingrid. This has been great. And we are signing off.
Thanks, John.
Thanks. It was great.